Hi, all you movers. Welcome to our hip flexor release. The hip flexor is a muscle that starts in your back and it goes all the way down to this insertion point in your leg. It's a very, very long muscle, and because it's so long, it crosses a lot of joints and can influence your core or your back. The first thing we're going to do is grab a blanket to do a passive release. So you can grab a thicker blanket, works best, and we're going to fold it to make it into a narrow kind of rope shape. So you want it to be symmetrically folded and make sure that it has a few inches of girth to it, because this is going to be what is going to release the hip flexor in our stomach. So I have rolled it and stacked it, and we're going to place it horizontally. And I'll show you the point we're going to use. It's just right above the bone of your hip. So you want to have the blanket just right above that bone. I'm going to just roll it over one more time to make sure that it can connect to the hip flexor. So I'm placing it right above the bone of my hip, and I'm going to take my head to the right and relax. And you should press the timer here and then rest here for about 5 minutes aside. After you've taken some time with your head to the right, you're going to turn your head to the left and then place that timer again for 5 minutes. If you don't have that much time, you could always do a lower amount of time, but the more you can stay here with the blanket contacting the hips, the more you're going to get a release in the muscle and trigger points. Then we're going to stay with the blanket where it is and stretch the quadricep, which connects up into the fascia of the hip flexor. So I'm showing you the front of my hip, which I want to continually push into the ground. It's more important to get your hip close to the ground than it is to get your heel close to your glutes. Again, we're turning the head to the right while we stretch the right side. Then we will release the right side and turn the head to the left as we grab the left leg into the quad stretch. You want to make sure that you have an equal amount of time on both sides of the quads. And after all this time relaxing on the floor, we're going to get up and do some deeper work into the whole anterior chain of the muscles of your leg, which will release that hip flexor. So you'll take one leg forward, and the opposite leg that's back, we are working at the top of the hip. So you want to make sure that you're dropping the pelvis towards the floor. You're pulling your pubic bone forward and you're drawing your lower belly up. And as you draw your lower belly up, this is really going to help to start to open up that hip flexor and not affect your back in a negative way. And then we'll take the other side. We're going to hold it for just as long. I want to show you another option if you've done this video a couple times, that if you want to get a deeper stretch, you can lift your arms up, which is certainly going to give you a deeper opening through the whole anterior chain of muscles. Now that we've done some great work prepping and opening the quad and hip flexors, we can go a little deeper. So let's make our way to our backs. You can either use blocks and set them underneath your sacrum, or you can use your arms like I'm going to do if you have no equipment. I'm taking my hands to my low back, even lower right onto my pelvis, and stacking my wrist above my elbow to use my bones to help hold up my pelvis. This might be a more advanced move if you don't have as much extension in the hips, and that's fine. It's something to work towards. Or again, you can use those blocks so your hips don't have to come up as high. So what you want to do here again is draw the lower belly in, so we're really getting the opening on the front of the hip and not jamming the low back. We're now moving on to one of my favorite stretches. So we're going to roll to our side or get up in any way that's comfortable. And we're going to bend the left leg, making sure that the left heel is right outside of your hip. You do not want that heel out too far because it'll put strain on the knee. We'll take the right foot to the left inner thigh, lift our pelvis, and start lowering back onto our elbows. You may stay there, or perhaps you make your way all the way to your back. I'm just going to show this from the side so that you get a different angle of what this looks like. So again, I'm lifting up my pubic bone, drawing in my lower belly, and then reaching the front of my left knee towards the floor to get a deep opening in the quad and hip flexor. Reaching your arms above your head is going to again get that whole anterior chain and really help with opening up these tight muscles that affect our whole entire back. And we're just going to take the other side. So again, making sure right heel is right outside of your right hip, left foot to inner thigh, and lying down. You will notice here that my back is a lot more arched on this side, and it's harder for me to get my right knee to the floor. This is because it's my dominant side and my right quadricep is much tighter. So really important here that I draw my ribs in a little bit more and my lower abdomen, which I'm clearly not doing, but I hope you can integrate this at home. So rest here as long as possible and then support yourself on the way up. We're going to try a bridge again, this time not supported, but using our muscles on the back of the legs to open up the front. So it's important again that we're drawing in the lower abdomen, lifting from the pubic bone, and there's an action of drawing the heels towards the shoulders to integrate the hamstrings as well. You can hold that as long as you want and then draw the knees into the chest to release your low back. We're going to move on to our last stretch for the hip flexor, and this is the big daddy of them all. This is going to be the double quad stretch that we just did with single leg. So heels are right outside your hips. You're lifting up through the pelvis, trying to make the back as flat as possible. Pubic bone lifts, belly draws in, and making your way to your elbows or all the way to your back. Stretching those arms so we get the full stretch into the hip flexor, the pecs, the abdomen, the quadriceps, and the anterior tibialis. Staying there as long as you want, supporting yourself on the way up. And that is your whole hip flexor release. Try this every day to really make a difference in the body from sitting.